Good morning, Sergeant Major.
Thank you.
Ms. Hollis, fellow classmates. My name is Master Sergeant Cheadle, and today I'll be giving you an unclassified information brief on Stand 3, the Lucas House. Today I'll be discussing the tactical importances of Lieutenant Lucas's arrival on the Drunkard Special, Lieutenant Lucas's initial actions, Lieutenant Castleman's location and duties and responsibilities as Staff Duty Officer, and Lieutenant Castleman's initial actions. Let's get oriented. Currently we are standing right down here just to the southeast of Coots Hill. As we came down the hill, came down the trail, we are standing right here. The location of the Lucas House is currently to the west, and directly off to your northeast is the headquarters building, which is pretty close to the Lucas House. I would also like to point out the barracks location, which would be off to your east, where the troop kitchen would have been located, and also the guard tent. Now, Lieutenant Lucas arrived to the 13th Cav in October 1914. When he got to Columbus, he wrote in his memoirs that there was hardly anything here, that he couldn't see anything. When the sun came up the next morning, he looked around and all he saw were a few adobe houses, a hotel, a market, bank, knee-deep sand, and snakes. He said the closest tree that he could see was in El Paso. So he knew he was in for a long haul while he was going to be in Columbus. So he gets assigned to F Troop originally when he gets to Columbus, but he does that for a short stay. In January 1915, he gets reassigned as the machine gun troop commander, and he commands these troops up until the raid on Columbus on the 9th of March 1916. Now, Lieutenant Lucas took the soldiers out into these areas to establish ranges and to teach the soldiers how to fire the machine guns. However, 2 weeks prior to the raid on Columbus, Lieutenant Lucas took a trip to El Paso to play polo with a couple of the other regiments. Now, after the polo games were over, he came back to Columbus. Now, this was one important hunch that he had out of the two critical hunches that he had during this operation. And that was normally he would stay in El Paso, stay the night, and come back the next morning. However, he decided to return to Columbus on the 8th of March. When he gets to the train station, he links up with Lieutenant Castleman. Now, Lieutenant Castleman passes on no information and basically says that there's no intelligence, that there's nothing going on in the area. However, as you've already heard from the previous two stands, Pancho Villa's, the Villistas have already staged and are ready to enter Columbus. So between the false intelligence and the fact that Lieutenant Benson's men had not picked up Pancho Villa, they were able to enter into Columbus basically undetected. So Lieutenant Lucas goes home. Lieutenant Castleman returns back to the Staff Duty Officer shack, and normally Lieutenant Castleman would go to sleep. However, this night he decides to stay up and he's going to read for a little bit. Lieutenant Lucas goes home, he goes into his quarters, and this is where the second important hunch pays off. He goes to grab his revolver and he realizes that his roommate, Lieutenant Benson, had emptied the ammunition out of his revolver when he left to go perform guard duty. Now, he would have gone to bed, but he had a hunch that he needed to go ahead and load his revolver, so he digs through the closet, digs through some trunks, pulls out the ammunition, and loads his revolver. And that's very important because at approximately 4:15, he's awakened by approximately 30 of the Villista soldiers surrounding the Lucas house. Lieutenant Lucas has an open window. He looks out. He sees the Villistas in the sombreros. So now he knows that Pancho Villa has not only entered town, but him and 30 of his officers have surrounded his house. So Lieutenant Lucas grabs his revolver. He stands in the middle of the room, and he's focused on the door. He's looking at the door. He's going to defend the house. Private Griffin, who's on guard duty at the headquarters building, which is located right here, he also observes the Villista army surrounding Lieutenant Lucas's house. So he fires one round, he kills one of Pancho Villa's men. When that happens, the Villistas then charge the headquarters building. Private Griffin is able to kill two more of Pancho Villa's men before he's mortally wounded. When that happens, Lieutenant Lucas leaves the Lucas house, and he's looking through his house in the middle of the night. He can't find his boots. He doesn't want to fire up a lantern because then he's going to give his position away and folks know that he's in there. So he searches through his house. He can't find his boots, and he takes off across the desert. Now, as you can see out here, imagine running across the desert barefoot across the cactus, across the tumbleweeds, all right, possible snakes and knee-deep sand to get so he can get over to the barracks to get a couple of men to make it across the wagon road to get to the guard tent so he can perform his mission, which is get the machine guns up and running. So he comes across the desert, he gets the men out of the barracks, he gets to the guard tent. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Castleman, who's at the guard shack, comes out, hears the gunfire, he comes out of the guard shack. Now his job is to establish the defense for the rest of his troop. Now the Army value that I want to discuss at this stand are two. Number one, we'll talk about Lieutenant Lucas and he executed the Army value of duty. He fulfilled his obligation. He gathered the men to execute the machine guns and get those into a defensive perimeter. The second Army value I want to discuss is Private Griffin, all right, who inculcated and executed the Army values of honor and personal courage. The personal courage to fire his weapon and take on approximately 30 men, drawing the Viestas away from Lieutenant Lucas's house. And then the second one is honor, who he laid his life down in defense of the city of Columbus and for the camp. Now, a couple of tactical errors that were made during this stand. All right. Number one is Lieutenant Benson, when he was out performing guard duty, if he had executed his recon correctly, should have picked up the Viestas prior to them getting to Columbus. All right. Also, the roving guards, if they had been doing their jobs, they also would have picked up the Viestas coming into town. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the information portion of my brief. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question. How do you think Lieutenant Lucas responded in light of the mass chaos?
I think Lieutenant Lucas did an outstanding job due to the fact that he's awakened at 4:15 in the morning. All right, so he gets woke up. The Viestas are surrounding his house, and he defends. He gets the machine guns up and operational. So he defends it really well. Once again, the question of how did Lieutenant Lucas do? I think he did a great job. All right, Lieutenant Castleman also, I think he did a fabulous job in ensuring that the defense was established, the machine guns are operational, and you'll also hear later on how important that was for the defense of Columbus. Lieutenant Lucas also goes on to get promoted to a 2-star general in his future, and it fights in World War I and World War II. So I think that both those lieutenants did an outstanding job. Are there any more questions? If there are no more questions, I will be followed by stand 4.